My name is Marla Isackson, and I am the founder of Like a Boss Girls Are Us. We want to empower you to live life on your own terms while giving you the support, encouragement, and information you need to make a living, make a difference, and make it big. The purpose of our Mind of a Mentor series is to showcase women who have experienced significant roadblocks and difficulties in their life and how they overcame these struggles to achieve great success. We believe that these stories will help you gain valuable insights and inspiration to help you on your life's journey. A quick note, if everyone would please take this time to mute your mics, we would appreciate it. And additionally, if anyone has any questions as Renee and I are talking, please type them into your chat. I'm going to be asking your questions towards the end of our discussion. Today, we are honored to have as our guest, Renee Millington, Head of Partnerships and Sales at ALEC. As we all know, amazing things just don't happen. You have to make them happen. It takes focus, enthusiasm, and perseverance. And that's what it took Renee to get to where she is today. Renee bravely left her life behind in Melbourne, Australia to pursue her version of the American dream. But it wasn't sunshine along the way. Her journey included a toxic relationship, and ultimately, Renee developed an inner strength to lift herself out of the toxicity and take ownership of all aspects of her life. Renee, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
So great to hear you. And you and I chatted for a second before we started, but I asked you, where is your Australian accent?
Yeah, I unfortunately, it sort of takes people a little bit aback when I tell them that I'm actually indeed from Australia, but I have a tendency to pick up accents pretty quickly wherever I travel to. So it's sort of a good trick to sometimes play on people, but a couple of drinks in, it definitely pops out.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you. So Renee, let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up in Australia? Tell us about Renee as a child. You know, your community, your family, your friends. What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely you're probably surrounded by every animal that can possibly kill you in the world. But definitely there tends to be some spiders just flying around in the backyard. But definitely it's definitely warmer weather there for sure. So I definitely grew up sort of climbing trees and enjoying sort of the surrounding environment. Education is pretty phenomenal there, and grew up with my mom, my dad, and my older sister. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it's Australia's an amazing place to be.
So what was living in Melbourne like per se? It's a big city, right?
It is relatively a big city. It's probably roughly a population of about 3 million, focused solely in Melbourne, which is where I predominantly grew up in my life in. And yeah, it's definitely, I mean, for Melbourne specifically, they've been named sort of like the #1 most livable city to live in, and it's definitely that for sure. There's a lot of culture there. People are very fashionable, and a lot of galleries and great, phenomenal food. We have pretty high standards when it comes to our food. We like our eggs to be poached just perfectly. So definitely a very comfortable lifestyle.
Okay. I'm definitely ready to go visit. It sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, right. They should pay me by commission, frankly.
Right, exactly. So tell us a little bit about you as a child. What were your dreams? What did you dream?
So I think as a child, much like any other person, my dreams sort of were incredibly erratic, and I went from wanting to be a cop to wanting to be a journalist to predominantly for a while there wanting to be an aeronautical engineer until I realized there was a lot of math involved. So yeah, had to quit that dream about a couple of months ago.
Okay, I hear you. Yeah, I wanted to be an astronaut, so I totally get that. Um, while you were growing up, did you ever dream about moving to a different country, such as the United States?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, for Australia specifically, I think because we're so isolated as an island, we have this tendency to want to travel everywhere outside of our own country, which is hilarious because every time we go overseas, everyone wants to be in Australia. Um, but there's this constant want and need to sort of venture outside of our boundaries, and I always wanted to travel and meet new people, and yeah, I definitely loved the idea of living in New York City. That was something I had set my mind on trying to do when I was 15.
So what actually did precipitate your move to the U.S., and when did you make the move?
So I made the move probably about, I would say, 3.5 years ago now. So it's been a little while now, which is funny to think back. But essentially, what precipitated my move was me falling in love with an American person, American citizen, and that's sort of what precipitated me sort of leaving my whole life behind, and thus me now being here where I am today.
So how was it making that decision to move? What was going through your mind at the time?
What was going through my mind at the time was definitely a lot of hormones, I'm sure. You know, I'm only currently 26, so being 22, 23. At that time, it was something that was probably very naive, but at the time I was very romantic. I was thinking very romantically, and I wanted to sort of, give up my life for somebody else, and follow them around New York City, and create a new life for myself because I believed that I could.
So was that just post-university, or were you working at the time when you left Australia?
I was definitely working at the time at a wonderful chocolatier as a manager there, and that was sort of just after post-studies, which was always a great time where you're suddenly left with a degree in hand and realizing, like, oh crap, now I actually have to put this piece of paper to use. But yeah, that's sort of what I was, the current position that I was in at the time, I guess.
So tell me what it was like moving to the United States. You moved for love, but what was the experience like trying to come to the U.S., integrate yourself into a new country? What was going through your mind at the time?
I would say definitely a lot of nervousness. It's an incredibly, for at least from what I heard, it's an incredibly expansive and competitive place to be, and some of the greatest minds and industries reside here. So it was both exciting and also very confronting. I would have to. That's sort of the simplest way to sort of put it, I guess. But I'm a stubborn person at heart, so when I put my mind to something, I have a tendency to just go for it.
So did you have any other friends or family in the U.S., or was it just the man that you fell in love with?
Yeah, no, I had no friends or family. Yeah, it was a big step, and it was also tough leaving my family behind, for sure.
So when you came to the U.S., did you have any thoughts in mind in terms of your job or your career? Sort of what were you going to do when you landed in New York?
Yeah, so I was previously in Chicago for a year. So I first landed in Chicago for a year.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then the year after that, I moved to New York City. Sort of the ideas that I had floating around my head were like multivarious. I had like architecture in mind because I love design. I had business in mind because I enjoyed business and economic studies or journalism. So I was sort of just at that stage of my life where I wanted to explore all different avenues, and America just felt like a great place to do that as well.
So, were you married? I think it was your husband, right? What was he doing at the time? What did he come to? What is his career? What was his career, I should say?
Yeah, so he was involved in politics at the time,
Hmm.
um, and helping out in canvassing for canvas groups. And so definitely intelligent person and very charming, and was able to sort of control a certain state as well at that time. And then thereafter, once sort of the politics faded out, he decided to transition over to green energy.
Oh, interesting. So he was working on his career in terms of politics and then pivoting to green energy. And where were you in your career thinking, your career progress?
Yeah, I was definitely far behind, and I think that's it was also affected by the relationship, of course, and feeling like somebody else was slowly overtaking my identity. So it was very hard to sort of see a clear path for myself with regards to sort of the abusive relationship that occurred.
Right. So let's talk about the relationship. So you were trying to find yourself, figure out what you wanted to do with your career. It sounded like your husband was building his career. At what point did it start to get very difficult?
Um, that's a tough one, so, because the thing with like abusive relationships is that it slowly creeps up on you, and it's like a fish in warm water. They don't realize that they're at boiling point until too late. Is sort of the perfect analogy to use here. But I think it was definitely when my friends started noticing things, is when I started realizing, oh my God, like if other people are starting to notice things, then we're getting to a point where I can no longer convince myself otherwise.
So let's talk about a little bit more about your friends. And so what did they say? How did they support you?
It would definitely be. I think that they never wanted to overstep their boundaries, and I think that they knew that they were definitely not sure. In the first place, they just sort of saw different behaviors that sort of changed in me. And they were just the type of people that slowly but surely would say, hey, like, I'm here for you. Is everything okay? And in the end, offer a home for me as well.
So to that point, what was the turning point or your aha when you realized this is not right? Something is not right here.
I would definitely say the turning point was probably, and this is such a funny, not that funny of a story, but sort of just funny in the most oblivious of ways, was when I was shoe shopping with my friend Francesca, and I was stressed out because I felt like I couldn't buy shoes without my husband at the time saying, yes, you can buy them, and giving me the okay. And I was so stressed and flustered. I was taking photos of shoes. I was sending them to him and like showing them to him, asking him, is this okay? Is this okay for me to purchase? And my girlfriend was just staring at me like just completely taken aback, I guess, and wondering how is this even a thing right now, and and she took me aside later and said, I can't, I saw you being stressed out about just buying a pair of shoes. Like, this is not okay. And
Right.
that was my aha moment.
So it sounds like your husband was exerting a lot of control over you.
Correct.
How did that impact your life in addition to, making decisions in terms of what to buy, where to shop, etc.?
Yeah, I think it affected me in the sense that I felt like I had zero confidence in any decision that I ever made. And also, from the clothes that I wore to how I looked, and to sort of like behaviors, and to your own work. You know, you feel like somebody else is slowly taking control of your identity, and you're essentially becoming a puppet. And that's sort of definitely what it felt like.
Right. So at this point in time, when you were going through this this acknowledgement that things were not right, were you working at the time?
I was, yeah, I was. I was working at Alley, and I can definitely attest to the fact that it was sort of the best place to work at during this point in time in my life. There are just a lot of supportive and great, strong women that I was surrounded by.
Did they know your husband?
They sort of knew of him, but I would go out of my way to ensure that he wasn't around my work as much as possible, including anything from events that I would attend to drinks after with my friends, even though that would become an issue when I would get home. They knew of him, but they weren't aware sort of really what was going on behind closed doors,
Right.
apart from my girlfriends at the time who were actually working with me at Alley.
So let's talk about your husband a bit. Why do you think he was abusive?
Oh, that's a toughie. I think that things like abuse, whether it be physical, emotional, it's the root of it is control. I'm a pretty stubborn person, and also quite independent, at least when he first met me, and so that lack of control over somebody else can turn into abuse, and it definitely started to pull me down as a person, and completely change who I thought I was.
Well, do you think he realized that he was being abusive?
Oh, I think he definitely realized that, but he would apologize after, like a lot of women go through in such cases, and or sometimes just tell me that I was crazy and that he just pushed me, you know, it was nothing. So it's you end up feeling absolutely insane because you keep being told that you're just imagining things, or keep being told that basically that this person loves you and they didn't mean it, and
Right.
It's sort of it becomes this vicious cycle where you slowly just internalize that pain, and it sort of just breaks you down even further, for sure.
So you mentioned that your aha moment was during the shoe shopping episode.
I know. Strange story, but definitely.
Yeah, but I guess my question more specifically is, what was the breaking point for you where you said, I am done. I can't go, enough is enough. I need to make a big change here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was when my friends Taisha and Francesca pretended that they were taking me out for coffee, and then they sat me down and they said, Renee, we love you, but you need to take a think about the life that you're leading right now, because we're your friends, but we can't even be your friends because your husband won't even let you out. And when you do go out, he's violent with you when you get home. Like this has to stop. And so that was definitely the breaking point for me, where I realized that my friends were essentially just not allowing me to sort of provide any more excuses anymore. Yeah.
So how did you make the move to leave? What did you actually do? What were your next steps after you had this big conversation with your friends?
So it was definitely a planning time for me. I had to make sure that not only was I protecting myself because I couldn't allude to the fact that I was going to be in the process of leaving him. So my plan was to essentially start taking clothes slowly but surely to work every day, hand it over to my girlfriend, and she was basically she was going to house me, you know, which was absolutely phenomenal of her, and I'm forever thankful. And slowly move all of my clothes back to her, and then I would take my legal documents slowly, and that was sort of the planning phase. But it came to a halt where there was one evening where he got drunk. He got really drunk, and during these times he's very, very violent. And he started getting increasingly aggressive. I decided to quickly take a napkin and a pen and go to the bathroom, and I quickly wrote down my girlfriend's phone numbers because he would have a tendency to take my wallet, my keys, my phone whenever he would, you know, at times kick me out of the house during our fights. And then I got out of the bathroom, and I ran to the bedroom. I took some pants because I was wearing no pants at this time. I took some pants and my bag, and I ran out the door. And hailed a cab, and I got in and drove straight to my friend Francesca's place, absolutely pantsless, by the way. So this taxi driver is probably thinking, what the hell is going on?
Right.
But that was the day that I didn't look back. Yeah.
So did your husband know where you were going? Did he have any idea where to find you?
Thankfully, no. That would have been the worst plan ever. I know that I had to turn off my location on my phone because he's quite tech savvy and he's searched for me before. But I went to my friend's place. He probably knew that I would go to my friend's place, but he doesn't know where she lives, thankfully, and I was definitely safe there.
Did you turn to any organizations to get help, or did it mostly come from your friends?
No, it came from my friends. You know, they gave me every piece of support that I could ever ask for. Yeah.
So in terms of our listeners, do you have any advice for our listeners in terms of how they can really identify and understand if they're in an abusive relationship? Any things to pay attention to?
Yeah, definitely. I think that with any abusive relationship, it starts off very, very, very small. You know, when I first met my ex-husband, it started off in little things like verbal abuse, and, you know, putting the other person down, or a little push and a shove there. That's when you know, as soon as that happens, that this is only going to progress from here. No matter what they say, those are the red flags, because it only gets worse. Understandably, well, at least for myself, a romantic like myself, I kept making the excuses for him because I didn't want to believe it, because I loved this person so much. I wanted to just make continuous excuses for them because I wanted to be loved so much, you know, and I couldn't bear the thought of this person not loving me. So I would essentially do anything for them, and that would include taking some beatings here and there. And you know, it starts off small, and I would say watch out for those small, little, minute behaviors, because it can possibly be something that will lead into a very abusive relationship.
So you had your friends to turn to, but just for our listeners, there are organizations out there that can help women in these type of relationships, and we'll certainly post information about them in the next day. I know women also will go to their religious clergy for help as well. Did any of this come to mind to you in terms of, again, back to going to an attorney, going to an organization, going to clergy?
Yeah, so definitely what I did was I turned to an attorney and sort of made sure that I got all my ducks in a row. And my attorney helped me out in that regards. So definitely look for an attorney. There's also attorneys that work free of charge for women in abusive situations.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely post and recommend some for sure.
Oh, that'd be great.
And definitely I started therapy, and I think that's, it's not for everyone, and you can seek help through your friends or through other organizations. But for me, therapy was incredibly important because I needed to also take a look at myself and why I continue to be in a relationship that was abusive. And that's not to say I'm blaming me. That's just to say that there's something that I need to repair for myself. I also need to repair the abuse that was done. You still live with that. You still live with the emotion attached to sort of the post-traumatic stress disorder is essentially what I'm going through. So definitely therapy was something that helped me out.
So when you tell your story to people, how do you feel? Because I know some women feel shame or feel that there's a stigma attached to this type of situation.
Oh, definitely. I've, and that's also to do with making sure that you surround yourself with the right people. Some people will feel uncomfortable to speak up about it because they're not around the right people who would support them. I've known some women who have said this before, saying, how could you be in an abusive relationship? You're basically just disrespecting yourself, so therefore how can I respect you?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore those are the people to cut out of your life, ladies and gentlemen. No, I think that there is a lot of shame that comes with it, which is why it took me so long to open up about this experience, because you feel so ashamed. I remember speaking to my friend the other day saying, I preach about feminism and I preach about being an independent person. I'm a different person when I'm at work, but how did I let this happen to myself? And, she basically said, look, like, this isn't your fault. You didn't go after an abusive relationship. You fell in love with somebody, and this is what happened. And now you overcame it, and that's what matters. You can still be a feminist and a wonderful woman and a person, and be a badass at your career, but also be in an abusive relationship. That doesn't change anything.
Right.
So yeah.
So just a quick follow-up question. Do you have any advice for our listeners if they're in this situation, how best they should articulate what's happening? Because I know, again, there's fear, there's concern. It's hard to be, straightforward about it. Any tips on what to say to actually make sure that the people surrounding you will understand what you're going through?
Right. It's a really tough one because, to this day, I'm still learning how to do that. I'm still learning how to make sure that I'm open and honest about the situation that I was in. And I would say just don't think about it too much, because the more that you think about it, the more that you're thinking about the way in which you should be saying it. And there's no right way or wrong way to say it. If you're in an abusive relationship, say what makes you feel comfortable to say, and go from there.
So you sound so grounded, and I know it was not easy and it took a lot of work, but how did you use this experience to get to where you are now?
I would say definitely it was the abusive relationship in a sort of paradoxical sort of way provided me with the strength to really just focus and hone in on my career, and really work hard and really put my heart and soul into my work at Ali. And predominantly most of our team are made up of women, and I'm surrounded by strong, independent women every day, and it only just made me feel not only more proud to be a woman, but also made me feel like, what, I can do this, and I just need to put my mind to it, and I was able to grow from there.
So it sounds like your job has been super supportive, and the people around you. What do you love about your job and the people who you work with?
One was definitely just the fact that everyone is just amazing, and I don't really know how to sort of put that into a tangible way, but everyone is incredibly understanding. Everyone comes from all different backgrounds, and we're all very much focused not only on our careers, but very much supporting one another. We're a very small team, but that's sort of been the integral sort of aspects to what Ali was all about. It was sort of just community over everything, and we really sort of built that from the ground up.
So as you're going through this process, building your career after escaping this very difficult and abusive relationship, did you have a dream or a vision in your mind of where you wanted to be?
Yeah, I think I didn't really have a specific idea in mind, but I knew that I wanted it to be at Ali. The fact that I was able to interact with so many businesses and so many people doing amazing things, and sort of network and share people's stories and help other businesses grow and other people and grow as well and see their personal stories as they grew their businesses. Anything from working moms to guys that have family at home and are doing this on the side. It's sort of phenomenal open environment.
So you're going through this journey now, which sounds like it may have changed from where you were when you were a child. Do you have any advice for members about finding their dream or achieving their dreams through their life's journey?
Yeah, definitely. What I would have to say about that is for me at least, make a list of the things that you feel like you're really good at. And it can be just as simple, at least for me, is talking to people. I always felt like I was able to make friends very quickly and connect with people, and something as simple as that can sort of just branch off into so many things. If you're interested in the startup field or you're interested in tech or anything, always go to events. It's sort of like the best way to do that is sort of attend events and get to know people in the field that you're sort of interested in. It's tough to think that you're going from 0 to 100, but really you just have to take it one step at a time and sort of place those steps in front of you.
Yeah, you were going 0 to 100 both personally and professionally. How do you deal with that?
It was probably not the most healthy way to deal with it, but I learned how to switch off from my personal life when I got to work, and understand that when I got to work, it was about my work and my job and my work persona, and it was about me killing it every day and showing everybody that I was here to get some work done and help everyone out. But when I went home, completely different persona would switch in, and in that sense, it sort of provided this weird duality in my life that was the only way in which I would be able to essentially deal with something like that. And I remember my therapist telling me when I would describe to her sort of like the abusive situations that would happen, I would be very cold as I described them. And she said, basically what you've done is you've created this brick wall in front of you, and because you're very cold when you're describing the relationship that you had. But I think this is what you did in order to survive, and I think that was sort of what my mind and body had decided to do so that I could sort of survive each day.
So, summing it all up, what do you think you learned the most about yourself from this situation?
I think from this is that your friends are imperative, and to surround yourself with really, really good friends. I truly think I wouldn't be sure if I'd be around here today if it wasn't for them. They've been the most supportive human beings that I've ever had in my life. and definitely that I can overcome anything if I put my mind to it. A degree isn't everything, and I got into this business purely by hustling into it, and wanting it and being a pest, and so I think that being stubborn about what you want in life is something that I'll forever keep with me.
So can you tell us a little bit about your job? Because it sounds as though your life experiences have enabled you to really succeed in terms of where you are. Just for our listeners, tell us a little bit about Ali and your experiences and your responsibilities.
Yeah, of course. So Ali is a phenomenal co-working space. Our ethos is community of everything, and we have all walks of life here, and all industries, from fashion to tech to healthcare, to real estate, and with that sort of eclectic environment, you get such interesting stories and journeys that come out of that. And essentially what we're trying to create here is a really supportive and nurturing environment for people here to really help them to succeed and live out their dreams. New York City is a pretty tough space for startups, and we want to ensure that we're providing all the tools and assets that we can in order to make that happen for them. So really providing a value add rather than just sort of a space for them to take another seat.
So it sounds like from a career perspective, from a job perspective, this is the right job at the right time based on the supportive community. And if you could just talk about that for a moment.
In regards to the timing?
Well, it sounds like based on your career progression at Ali that it really dovetailed very well with your life experiences.
Yeah, no, it certainly did. I first started off, when my husband and I first moved to New York City, I found a posting for someone for the front desk at Ali, and I know my husband at the time was pressuring me to find a job, so I sort of pretended that I was a company and showed up and asked for the manager, and ended up touring the space and then essentially interviewing that person for the job, and from then on I became more and more of a pest and helped out at events, and then was a part of the experience team, and then was able to move up the line from there. So it was definitely for sure the right timing for both my relationship and also my inner relationship with myself, which was going into absolute shambles, and then this sort of like amazing supportive and community that I was able to sort of hitch a ride with, if you will, and really work my butt off there. That sort of really helped to heal me.
Well, you are very tenacious, and I could hear it in terms of your success in your career and the way you were able to work through this very difficult relationship. So I think it's pretty amazing. You're very brave, and I really admire you. I know this is very, very difficult. So I wanted to open this up for questions from our listeners.
Sure.
Please take a step and ask your question.
Yeah, I have one. This is Lucy. And I actually have two, Renee. My first one is, so in college, I was witness to, my best friend was in a codependent abusive relationship, and she too was like, but I love him, and I know he's sweet and gentle, and then he just like explodes. And I had never been in this. This was as close I had ever come to like violence, and so I felt very out of like fish out of water, like the rationale of saying like you're better, you deserve better, like no human being should be treated this way wasn't working at the time. And in retrospect now, it having been 7 years ago, I just am like I still wonder, like, she got out by just horrible circumstances. But basically, my question is, I wish I would have had somebody who had been on the other side of it at that point to ask, like, what can the friends do when, like, I had approached the mom of my best friend to try and get involved. So, sorry, this is such a long, rambling question.
No, not at all.
But just, I would have loved to have someone who was on the other side, healthy and well, and to give advice to the friends who sat you down, you know, because especially, like, in college, I was 19, and like, that's a hard situation to deal with no matter your age, and then you're also like little babies, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, just do you have any words of wisdom for girlfriends to help their friend? And I know at the time I took things personally, which was so selfish of me, because but
not at all, Lucy. You know, it's a really, really tough position to be in, and I'm sure for my friends even tougher, because they were essentially tasked with trying to you know, take me out of an abusive marriage. You know, this wasn't even just a boyfriend-girlfriend situation. And I think that, you know, I hope your friend is okay, and I'm glad to hear that they finally got out, even though it's under certain terrible circumstances. B, that it was nonetheless, it's great that you were able to speak up, you know, because in comparison, there were a lot of people around me at the time, people that even I lived with, that didn't say anything, you know, and they knew what was going on, and you know, friends and family included. What I can say is that you can try and plead and sort of offer help, but at the end of the day, they're gonna move when they want to move, you know. And I was lucky enough that, you know, it was possibly timing for me. You know, I was getting more comfortable with my career, and I felt a little stronger to take that transition. I also had my girlfriend that had offered me a place to stay, and even though it's the most you know, terrible of circumstances, a lot of it has to do with timing, and you can't unfortunately force anyone to change their lives. But offering your help and telling them that you're there for them, you know, Lucy, like, that's really phenomenal of you, especially at the age of 19.
Well, thank you for just sharing your whole, just being so open and, like, honest and self-aware about yourself too. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that with all of us here. And then one of the questions that somebody asked was, do you have, that I would love to know as well, was what advice do you have for women who are coming out of abusive relationships to deal with making new connections?
Mm-hmm. I would definitely say going to meetup groups and organizations of women that have been abused is sort of the first step from there. And look into things that you're really passionate about. For example, if you're really passionate about painting, or if you're really passionate about photography, go to meetup groups. You know, try and make sure that you're getting out there as much as possible. But obviously in your own time, because it takes some time to heal. You know, and everyone is different, and you're going to go through that stage where, I know that I went through this, that essentially I was just mistreating myself after I left. You know, I felt ashamed. I felt like I hated myself. I felt alone. But definitely ensuring that I was surrounding myself with a very supportive community and attending therapy, even though that I was not in a good place, is sort of like just the small baby steps that you can sort of handle.
Awesome. Thank you. And yes, I'm all about therapy. For me, my whole bout with that was with, like, clinical depression, and I could not, and I just want to, like, diminish the stigma around it. So I'm just so glad that you two are like, hey, if it works for you, try it out.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you so much, Lucy.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone in the audience? Okay. Renee, I just wanted to ask you if you had any parting words for our listeners, anything else that you wanted to communicate?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I think I was a little bit hesitant about sort of sharing this story. It's it's a very private matter, and also there is, like Lucy said, in some aspects, there's a lot of stigma that's around it, but also there's this sentiment towards women, men, and anyone in the LGBTQ community that are in abusive relationships that they need to keep quiet. And I'm sort of here to tell you, fuck that, basically. Sorry, but essentially, like,
Right.
It's time for women and men and everyone else to sort of feel comfortable to be able to speak up. And it doesn't need to just be people that are being abused, but it needs to be a part of the general conversation and discourse, because silence is the power of abusive relationships. And I'd like that to hopefully sort of change over time, and hopefully this sort of conversation helps.
So speak up and ask for help, because help is out there. I think that's a really important point, Renee. It was so wonderful having you as our guest today. I just so admire your courage and your honesty and your willingness to share with our audience. So again, we are very grateful, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Marla. Thanks, guys, for listening in.
So I would say that until next time, thank you for joining us for Mind of a Mentor, brought to you by likeabossgirls.com. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.